Hi everyone, I'm Imogen from Course Report. We are a resource for researching which coding bootcamp is right for you. We have a directory of different coding schools, a blog, and interviews with founders, instructors, and students, all to help you work out which bootcamp you want to go to. Today, I'm speaking with Alex Mannix, a graduate of Codesmith Coding Bootcamp. Alex is going to tell us about her experience learning to code, how she landed an awesome scholarship to help pay for bootcamp, and what she is up to a few months after graduating. So Alex, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Excited to talk.
Yay. So maybe we could start and you can tell me about your career and education background and how your path led you to go to Codesmith.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I graduated from undergrad in 2015. I was a linguistics and international studies double major. And actually where I started, my interest for engineering started when I was an undergrad. I was a linguistics major, but I was working on a project that had to do with language documentation and a project that was building a website for certain indigenous languages in the Oaxaca, Mexico region. So I wasn't working on much of the engineering side of it. I was doing a little bit more of the linguistic research side, but that's where I was learning technology can be used in all these interesting ways, and there's all these interesting problems to solve. And so just kind of going out of undergrad, I kind of had a hodgepodge of jobs. I worked in the nonprofit world for a little bit, but every job I had, I found ways to kind of do engineering-like challenges, whether it be helping to build small scripts and applications for a startup that I was working for, or just in the nonprofit world, working with different content management services and things like that. So I moved around a lot with these nonprofit jobs, and then I moved to New York, and again was just I was feeling unfulfilled in some of the other things that I was doing, and so I really decided to focus on the engineering side of what I really like to do. And I was mostly self-taught at that point. I had taken linguistics classes, but had only taken a couple computer science classes in undergraduate. So yeah, I just I really decided to dive into it as an interest, and then going through all these courses online and self-learning, and I was just having so much fun with it. And I actually found Codesmith because of their free workshops called JavaScript the Hard Parts. And I was just going because, I was learning on my own and doing, Leak Code and Code Wars and all these things by myself. And I would get so frustrated and just wanted to go and have a little bit more of a social experience. And I went to the workshop, and it was just so fun. I pair programmed for the first time while I was at one of those workshops, and just had a really great time, both with the people who came to the workshop, and then also the instructors just had such a deep understanding of JavaScript, and made it such a cool, engaging way to learn about not just web development, but it felt more computer science-y than I think a lot of the other things that I was doing just online or by myself. And yeah, so I went to the workshops and started coming weekly. And then I think through that, I decided, I'm going to apply to the immersive program. I'm going to actually go and, spend, I think it's 3 months of my life just devoting to learning. And I'd been out of school for, a couple of years at that point. So I just really missed learning and being in that environment. And yeah, it just ended up being one of the best decisions I've ever made.
Yay, congrats. That's so good that it all turned out. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, you were saying how you tried to teach yourself and then you came across Codesmith, but did you consider any other education options, like another boot camp or going back to college or anything like that?
I did actually, and especially because I had my linguistics degree, and I knew that I'm considered maybe going back and getting a master's in computational linguistics or something like that. And then also I had just, in my learning, so many of these there's so many online platforms for learning that I was going to a bunch of them, and I won't say which one, but I did kind of a paid prep course at one of the other schools in New York. And, you know, I liked it. And that's kind of like, I was like, okay, cool. Maybe like this also helped me decide like this path will be right for me. One, just because of the cost, like getting a master's is really expensive. And, you know, these programs aren't cheap, but compared to a 2-year program, you know, the bang for your buck that you get in, you know, 3 months versus 2 years is just pretty amazing. And then, yeah, I knew in terms of the learning environment that I wanted to be in, I knew that I learned better with people. I learned better in like classroom, seminar, just like group environment. Like that's really like where my learning would be best, as opposed to me like trying to fit it in on the side, like with other jobs or, you know, in the evenings and stuff like that. So I really knew I wanted an immersive experience. And then just in terms of other programs, like I said, I did a paid like week-long course at another school, but I went to these free workshops that Codesmith was hosting, and I found the level of instruction at if not equal, higher level than what I had been paying for. And so I was like, this is a no-brainer. I'm definitely gonna choose here. I met such wonderful people at the meetups, and I was really impressed by Codesmith's staff. And yeah, it just felt right.
That's awesome. That's so cool. And so when you decided, you know, I am going to go to Codesmith, what was your goal? Like, did you have a specific role or job or type of company you wanted to work for in mind?
That's a good question. And it's funny because it's been almost a year since I started now, and I'm trying to think and remember back exactly what. And I think I don't think I had an exact role or an exact company in mind. I really just I loved learning. Like I loved learning JavaScript. Like I loved like working on these coding challenges. I loved like pair programming with people, and I realized it's kind of what I just wanted to spend my time doing. And then again, because I was kind of familiar with some engineering world stuff, but I also didn't know exactly what it was going to look like to have like a software engineering job or a web developer job. You know, I know I liked certain things about it, but also part of me kind of going through this process was like, you know, this will really prove if I want to do this for like 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, like, then of course I'll want to do it in like a 9-to-5 type of thing. So I think I was still learning like about the industry. And so part of my motivation was, hey, I'm going to go spend all this time with all these really knowledgeable people and learn more about the industry and learn more kind of what I'm going to get out of it. I know there were definitely other people in my cohort who I think had a more clear vision of what they wanted, and who had also like worked in different parts of the industry. But yeah, I was excited to learn. I was excited to be able to apply these skills that I was learning. But I found during the program, I found myself a little bit more drawn to like backend development, or I'm not a very like visually design oriented person. Like if you tell me, I don't want to decide what it's going to look like. I want you to tell me what it's supposed to look like, and then I'll build it. Like that's but I think maybe I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't like gone to Codesmith and then had the chance to work with people and say, oh great, I'm going to work more at the front end of this, and I'm going to work on more in the back end of this. And like getting the chance to try out those things was just really, really helpful for someone like me who was a little bit more newer to like some more of the professional side of the industry, and then also was just trying to figure out what I liked.
That all makes total sense. Yeah, that's a really good idea to kind of, you know, actually try it out before you decide what path you want to take. That's cool. And so, yeah, congratulations on landing the Edie Windsor scholarship.
Thank you.
I was wondering, I don't know all that much about it. I was wondering if you could tell me about kind of what the process was like to get that, and how you kind of like say which boot camp you want to apply it to, and what it covers and things like that.
Yeah, so the Edie Windsor Scholarship, it's a scholarship given by the Lesbians Who Tech organization, which is an organization I'm committed to. I don't have their mission statement memorized, but they're basically committed to helping LGBT people and women and voices underrepresented in tech. get into tech. So they offer a really amazing scholarship that is 50% of your bootcamp tuition they will pay for. And so that's what happened. I applied, and the application process is incredibly simple. It's, I believe, if it hasn't, it might have changed a little bit since I applied, but I wrote, I think it was two essays, two like 500-word-ish essays, and then I sent it off, and they sent me an email back a couple weeks later, I think, that said I was a finalist, and they had me fill out just another quick survey. That again, yeah, it wasn't anything super intensive or super. It was just kind of like, tell us your name, tell us, are you accepted to the boot camp that you're going to? Are you still waiting to be accepted? And then I got another email, I think a couple weeks later, that said, congrats, we've chosen you. So the process was really simple. And then I can't remember, they might have changed their policy. I think you might have to apply to one of the schools that they're partnering with to get the scholarship, but they have it on their website. I think the schools that they partner with, and then yeah, also they're also good. If you email them, and they're great at answering questions. They also do, so the scholarship is one thing that organization does. They also put on summits. So they also paid for my registration for their most recent summit in San Francisco. So I got to go to that, which was really exciting. It was my first. I think, yeah, it was my first tech conference. I'd been to a bunch of tech meetups, but it was my first full-blown tech conference, and it was amazing. And they do such incredible things for like LGBT people in tech, women in tech. It's just, yeah, it's an awesome organization, and I feel incredibly grateful to not only have received their scholarship, but then also to be now in this community of people. They have a Slack group, they have volunteer events, they have all this amazing stuff. So it's an incredibly impressive organization that I feel really grateful to have kind of stumbled into. I think I saw an ad for it on Facebook or something.
That's awesome. Thanks for explaining all that. And then, so when you actually applied for Codesmith, can you tell me about the application and interview process you went through for that, and how kind of difficult or easy it was?
Yeah, it was not easy. It was definitely a little nerve-wracking, but I'll say, the staff and everyone, all the instructors, Will, who's the CEO, was always incredibly supportive, and that's also a theme of Codesmith. Everyone's incredibly supportive and is really rooting for you. So it feels like a really positive space and energy. But so there's two to three different stages of the interview. So you fill out a form and you apply, and then you come in for it's almost like a phone screen. It's a little bit like a cultural interview. You just talk about, why are you interested? What's your background? It's a little bit more of a get to know you type of interview. And then if you seem like a good fit for the program, kind of based on your background, based on kind of your knowledge and stuff like that, then they schedule a technical interview for you, or a coding challenge. I can't remember what terminology they use actually. But they schedule a coding challenge, and you come in, and it's essentially like a paired programming session with one of the instructors, except they kind of give you challenges, and you're trying to solve them. And really what they're looking for, and they explain all this, but what they're really looking for is to see how you think. There's obviously a certain level of knowledge that you have to have of JavaScript and coding and kind of all this stuff before you enter the program, just because it's a really intensive program. And if you're not at a certain level of being able to solve certain problems and understand certain concepts, you won't be successful. But really what they want to do is not judge you on, oh, are you technically set, or do you have enough coding experience to do this? It's more how do you think, and how do you solve problems, and how do you communicate? Communication is one of the biggest things. So they said, we want to know what your problem solving technique is. If you run into a problem, feel free to talk it out with us. Feel free to Google things. Feel free to, look up documentation, while you're in the interview, because that's what you do on the job. And with my job now, it's the amount of time I spend Googling things is insane. So it's interesting too, because I actually didn't pass the first technical interview that I had. I think for two reasons. I think one, I was so incredibly nervous because I had pair programmed with people before, but this was just like a whole, like I hadn't had a test since I was in college. Like I don't think I ever had an oral test where I had to since I guess I defended my thesis in college, but like I was being evaluated like right there. And so it was really nerve wracking. And so I think I kind of like froze, but then, and I also was still kind of self-teaching and still practicing all these kind of different JavaScript concepts. And so, yeah, then they said, hey, that's okay. We'll give you feedback on kind of things we think you can do better. And then we'll have you back for another interview in a week. And I came back in a week and I did a little bit better, I think. Sometimes that's the end, but sometimes they'll ask you to come in for another, what they call less of a challenge, more of a pair programming session where you really like go through like where you got stuck with one of the instructors and you talk through it and, see, it's like a kind of a mini pair programming feedback session in itself. And yeah, so I came in and I did that, and it was, by that time it just like felt more comfortable. And I had been practicing a lot more. I'd been practicing, coding with other people and practicing. And so luckily they let me in. And then I got a call from the CEO, Will, who's just a fantastic guy. And I actually said I think I applied for the April cohort, and he said I was ready to go in April, and I actually deferred to go in June because I just was so overwhelmed and said, oh my gosh, like, this is a really rigorous program. Like, they have such high standards. Like, I don't think I'm ready yet. I think I need to practice more. And he said, okay, like you can probably, like, we think you can do it, but if you want to defer, like, go ahead. And so I did. But that's just another example of like they believe in you and they wouldn't accept you if you weren't ready, but they're also very supportive. And yeah, so it was a good experience all around. Nerve wracking, but then ended up being good.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like quite an intense process, and that's that's awesome that you kept going and went through it a second time. Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
And so once you started the program, can you tell me a bit about your cohort? Like, I'm interested in like how many people there were and how diverse it was in terms of like gender and race and age and sort of backgrounds.
Yeah, so definitely, really diverse in a lot of different ways. So there were 12 of us, I believe, in my cohort. There were 4 of us were women, which was great. Could be better, but also, in the tech world, we take what we can get at the moment. And so, just like a good diverse group of people in terms of experience as well. There were some people who had been to a boot camp previously who decided to come to Codesmith just because it was kind of like the next level up. There were people who had never worked in the engineering industry. There were people who had worked who had worked at ton companies and had worked in design or had worked doing some programming. Just a really great mix of people that made it really helpful for when we were going through the program, because we were able to draw on each other's experiences a lot. There were some people who had been like going to hackathons for years, and then maybe some people like me who had like tinkered but like never really dove super deep into things. So just an awesome group of people, and I've met some of my best friends there. So it's really they were awesome.
That's so cool. That's so nice that you had such a nice group. And then can you tell me a bit about the learning experience at Codesmith? Like, maybe you can describe like a typical day and the kind of teaching style they had.
For sure. So a typical day kind of differs depending on where you are in the program. So there's a junior portion and then a senior portion. And then there's kind of like the second half of the senior portion that's also called the hiring portion, where you're working on resumes, doing interview prep, and all that kind of stuff. So a typical day for during your junior phase is you'll come in, there's like a daily hack hour, so just kind of like a warm-up exercise to do, and then you would then kind of go into a lecture where you would the modules were, so the different learning modules were in like 2 days. So during the first day of a learning module, you would go in and kind of have like an intro lecture, and you'd kind of learn about the topic you'd be doing for the day, whether it be Node or React or like data structures or just kind of all these different learning modules. And then you, after the lecture, which would be like anywhere from like an hour to maybe in like hour 20 minutes, you would go out, and for a big chunk of the day, the next 2 days would just be working on a problem set and working it out with your pair programming partner. And then at the second day of the module, you would have kind of like an answer session where you would go in and kind of help or go over the answers to the problem sets with an instructor, like answer any questions, like go through any like especially difficult problems, like learn, just kind of have like a tail end to that session. So absolutely everything you do in your junior phase is with a pair programming partner, which I think is a really big, awesome hallmark of like Codesmith, how much they really invest in technical communication and making sure that, you know, you're not just understanding the concepts yourself, you're understanding them well enough so you can explain them to someone else, so you can help someone else through problems. And so you know what questions to ask when you're having problems, like how do I organize my thoughts in a way that I can ask for help from someone, that I can work collaboratively with people. But it's really, and I think another like really big thing that Codesmith like teaches, it doesn't just teach you JavaScript concepts, it teaches you how to learn and how to go in, and they teach you how to look at a problem and say, I don't know how to figure this out yet. I have some tools, but I need to Google some things. I need to go and look at documentation. I need to go to look at MDN. I need to read like the documentation for React. I need to read some blogs. I need to go on Stack Overflow. And I honestly think that was one of the things that prepared me for my job more than anything, because on any given day, I work in a code base where, people have been writing this code for years, and a lot of the people who have written the code are not around anymore to ask what's going on. And it's, I kind of have to use my research and problem solving skills to go in and do it. And that really reminds me of during my junior phase when I was just like really struggling with a problem set and had to kind of figure some stuff out. So, so then during your senior portion, that's more of the project portion. That's when you're actually building something. You're building a developer tool. You're taking what you learned in your junior phase and you're applying it to something that you think will be helpful to the developer and engineering community. I know people in my cohort built things like a Lambda orchestrator, a dev tool to help with GraphQL. I built a AWS metric visualizer, which was really cool. So you really get to dive into a really in-depth project that you think will be contributing to the developer community. And then and then the second part of that senior, during a hiring phase, you will be working on your resume, practicing interviews, and again, it's a whole other skill to learn, and it's nerve-wracking, but it's definitely fun. And again, you're always working with people. You're always working collaboratively. When you're building your project, you're working in a group of 4 to 5 people. So it's definitely a really intense intellectual experience, and then it can be somewhat of an intense social experience as well, but a fun one.
That's awesome. And yeah, you were saying that for the second half of the senior phase, you were working on your resume and practicing interviews and stuff. And I was wondering if you could tell me a little more about that. Like, how else did Codesmith prepare you for the job hunt? Like, were they able to provide sort of interviews with real clients or introductions or anything like that?
Yeah. So, well, one thing they do is lots and lots and lots of practice. So you're always practicing kind of out loud, doing mock interviews with your cohort mates, with alums who come back to do mock interviews, which is really great. And then there's also a hiring day where they bring in people or they bring in companies in the industry that just are, just really want to hire people. And it's almost like speed dating a little bit. There's anywhere, I think there were like 10 or 12 companies that came to our hiring day, and you get to choose which people you want to talk to, and then kind of go and get to give your pitch. And if they're interested, you get to move on in their interview process. But it's an amazing way to just start to understand a little bit more about what kind of jobs there are available, what people are looking for, and then also to just get out there and practice interviewing and interview with as many interesting companies as you want to.
Oh, that's really awesome. And so can you tell me about your kind of post-Codesmith experience and how you landed your current job?
Yeah, so I really hit the ground running right after I graduated in September. I spent about 2.5 months applying for jobs nonstop. Just one of the staff at Codesmith says that we say that there's 2 parts to Codesmith. Actually, there's 3. There's your junior phase, your senior phase, and then after you graduate, it's your get a job phase. So it's really just putting in the time and effort to follow up with the people that you met on hiring day, to outreaching to companies that you'd be interested in, to digging into your network and seeing who you can talk to, and going to events to network and kind of try to get more information about what kind of jobs you want to be applying to. And so my whole process, I believe, lasted about 2.5 months, where pretty much 9 to 5 I was applying and interviewing. And the interview process generally was you had a phone screen, which was a little bit like a cultural interview, and then you had a tech screen, which was often a coding challenge with one of the company's engineers. And then depending on the company, there might be another coding challenge, or there would be an on-site interview where they would ask you to come on site and you would do a whole, hours of a coding challenge / culture interview, meeting different people who would be on your team, meeting different leadership. And so it was a pretty grueling process. I found it a lot of fun just because I was also still kind of trying to figure out what position would fit best for me. So I really felt like I was interviewing the people who I was interviewing them as much as they were interviewing me, and kind of got to treat it as a fun conversation. But my process with the company that I'm currently with kind of went through the phone screen, tech, and then on-site interview, and then luckily was offered a job.
Congratulations, that's so awesome. So can you tell me a little bit about the role and what sort of projects you're working on?
Mm-hmm. So I'm a software engineer working on what we call the web team. So I'm working on the website. So I'm working with JavaScript. I'm working with PHP, which is actually a language that I didn't know before I started working, which is kind of cool. I've gotten to learn a new programming language on the job, and I'm actually giving a talk at a meetup this week about that experience. So that's another thing I think Codesmith helped prepare me for. Just like you're not going to know what you're doing, and you have to just go and figure it out and use the tools that you have to do that. So so I worked with JavaScript, PHP, React, Redux, SQL, Apache servers, Jenkins, which is a continuous integration and build software. Or it's a framework, I guess. But so I'm working with all these different technologies, and I'm getting to, what's cool about working on kind of full stack, so both the front end and the back end, I get to see, I get to have really visible work in terms of stuff I can show my parents, because they have no idea what I do, but I can show them, look, you go to that website and you click that button, I did that. So that's kind of fun. That's the fun side of web development. But then I'm also getting to work with, like database queries and stuff like that, different server side problems, which has been really fun.
Wow, it sounds like a cool job. And I'm interested in what sort of team you're working on, like how big is it, and are there many other women?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm really lucky. I work at a company that has recently, but also I think has for a while been trying to close the gender gap in terms of their engineering team. And so I work with an engineering team of about 30 people. And then outside of that 30 people, or inside of that 30 people, I work on a team of 4 developers, but then also 2 designers, a product owner, and a Scrum Master. So, because we use Agile development. And I think I'm the only woman developer on my team, but we have, I think, I'm not counting right, but at least 10 other women developers in the whole team. So still, not quite half, not quite more than half, but I definitely I see the difference of, especially the company I work for now, and even places I went to interview at, where I would have been either the only woman engineer at all, or one of 2, or one of 3. And so I feel really lucky to be where I'm at and work in a place where the people are really committed to having a really inclusive and diverse workspace.
That's awesome. How was the job going? How are you feeling about working at this company?
Yeah, I mean, generally very all things considered, very well. But I think I do struggle with imposter syndrome, just because I am working with so many really amazing, talented, and people who have been in the industry for a long time. And while I'm definitely really confident in my abilities and what I can do, sometimes it can be really intimidating when I have a colleague who is been there for 5 years, and sometimes he gets his tickets done much faster than I do, just because he knows the code base a bit better. He understands, he's just been doing it for longer. So but at the same time, I feel like I'm able to hold my own in terms of learning new things, learning a code base that is really, really huge. So yeah, it's going well. I won't say that there aren't days where I get frustrated with myself, or I get frustrated and just want to do more, and frustrated that maybe it's taking me a little bit longer to work out a problem, or luckily I'm in a workspace where questions and collaboration like that is really, really encouraged. So I don't think I've ever felt like, if I get really stuck, I couldn't ask someone. It's more, I can be a little stubborn. And so sometimes I say, no, I'm going to figure this out by myself. But I have to kind of do a check and say, hey, it's okay. You're here to contribute, but also we're all here to learn and build something good together. So one of the best parts of my job is getting to work with the people I work with.
That's awesome. And I'm interested in how your background and your college degree have been useful in becoming a software developer.
For sure. The more relevant degree to coding is linguistics. And actually, a lot of the times when I say that I studied linguistics, people say, oh, that makes sense that you're a software engineer now, because the study of linguistics is really focused on syntax and breaking down language into its kind of smallest parts and seeing how it fits together and doing analysis that way. And that's a lot of what coding is. It's thinking about logic and syntax and puzzles and how things fit together. So I think it kind of makes sense that I found my way here, because I really enjoyed looking at language that way and learning new languages. But also all the work that I did before, in the nonprofit world, kind of working in the startup world for a little while, and kind of doing a hodgepodge of things, I learned how important communication is and how important it is to see the big picture. And so I'm really, really grateful for those experiences too, because I feel like that was where I learned how to work on a team. That was where I learned how to communicate problems with people that might not be technical, that might not know, if I start rambling off JavaScript things, they're going to be like, what are you talking about? So learning to communicate with people in that way, and learning to just work with people, I feel really grateful for having that work as well, even if it wasn't directly engineering work.
And then what would you say has been kind of the biggest challenge or roadblock in your journey to becoming a software engineer?
I think it's just, it would be that imposter syndrome, that thought of this isn't for me. I can't do it. You know, I also, you know, I won't say it's not that I didn't like math or consider myself, you know, interested in science or, you know, STEM things in college. I just kind of, that wasn't, I kind of put it aside. I put coding aside as something that just wasn't for me. Kind of early, like a little bit more early on. And then just as I started to realize that, oh, it's more about problem solving. It's more about like finding these patterns and, you know, learning a new language. Kind of, I really wish that would have stuck a little earlier. Like, and I'm glad it eventually got there, but I think that, yeah, my own confidence in myself and my thinking that, oh, you know, this stuff isn't for me. I haven't been doing this since I was 10 years old. So why? The only people who are software engineers are people who have been building computers since they were 5. And that's just not true. You know, and those people exist and that's great. But yeah, I think having just a lot of different experiences has really helped me narrow in on the things that I like and the things that I really love to learn. And this is an industry and a job where I'm constantly learning something new every day.
I mean, yeah, it sounds like you've overcome a lot of those things. So that's amazing. And then how are you kind of staying in touch with or involved with Codesmith? I'm interested if you've kind of stayed in touch with instructors or other alumni.
Yeah, so unfortunately, my job took me to a different city. I don't live in New York anymore, which is a big bummer because I really miss all my friends that I met when I was doing Codesmith in New York. But and besides just kind of the general like staying in touch, like, you know, we have group chats and Slack and all that stuff. You know, anytime there's a call for people to, you know, do a mock interview with current students or stuff like that, like I always like to do that just because I remember how crazy it was and how fun it was to see when other people came back and like, oh, you actually went through this, you actually did this. So I try to do that whenever I can. Also, I've made it clear to the staff that anytime that they have anyone who is interested in talking to someone with a similar background as me, anyone who's interested in the Lesbians Who Tech scholarship, that I'm always happy to talk to people. And then, yeah, just the alumni network at Codesmith is really great. Like we do, I unfortunately are not involved in events that happen in New York or LA, but there's just like a vast network of people out there where, and a pretty active Slack group. Like I see questions going on there all the time. Also people posting about jobs that they have at their companies. So I luckily haven't had to use that aspect of it too much, but I know that there are people that I can reach out to if I need help. And I feel the same way I feel really incredibly lucky to be part of the Lesbians Who Tech community. I feel incredibly lucky to be part of the Codesmith community, and just know that they're smart, exciting, amazing people who are going to be willing to help me, and I'm willing to help them.
That's awesome. And yeah, you've already mentioned quite a bit about Lesbians Who Tech and how you're kind of keeping in touch with them. But I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about, you know, what is it like being a woman in tech and how you're still able to be involved with Lesbians Who Tech now that you've graduated? Yeah.
So like I said, they had a summit in San Francisco. I think it was in April. So I got to go to that. They have events and different things like that. And yeah, I think I'm still learning kind of what it means to be a woman in tech. I'm really, really lucky. The company I work for, they are really cognizant and really intentional about hiring women and diverse like candidates. But I think it's just like always a little bit in the back of my mind, like, hey, like, am I not speaking up because, you know, men are talking too much in the room? Am I not speaking up because, you know, I need to learn a little bit more? And just kind of like always having that in the back of my mind, like, you know, what are the different power structures in the room and kind of what effect is that having? And I I've made a conscious effort to speak at least once in every meeting that I'm in. Just not if I don't have anything to say, but just to kind of get in the practice of when I do have something really important to say, then I'll be used to saying it. So it's interesting. And I'm part of a women in tech group at the company I work at. And I think it's really just about creating community and being there to support people and and being visible, because that was a really big thing for me. I think I'm really inspired, not only in my company by some of the women who've been there for a little bit longer and have kind of made their stake, but also just in the tech community in general. I'm always really excited when I see that a woman is speaking at an event, or just I think visibility and representation is really important in all aspects of like inclusion and diversity in tech.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's so cool. And then what advice do you have for other people, especially women, who are thinking about making a career change through a boot camp like Codesmith?
Yeah, and just, you can do it. If you're waiting for someone to give you permission, here it is, do it. It's hard to over exaggerate how much Codesmith changed my life. I never thought I'd be making as much money as I'm making now. I never thought I would be, and I just never thought of myself as an engineer, even if I was doing things that were related. And yeah, it's just, I met amazing people. It was really hard. It was really challenging, but it was the best thing that's ever happened to me. So if you want to do it, do it.
That's awesome. That's great advice. So yeah, thank you so much for making time to chat. It's been really fascinating hearing about your journey, and yeah, all the best with your career. Hope your job continues to go really well. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was lovely to meet you.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.